Ladies and Germans, how you all doing? This is Con Ulrich.
This is Zhang-Ru, low.
And folks, today on Haroshaje, we're actually going to go and bring you a division that doesn't belong on water, and a division that belonged originally on the other side of the actual axis. Who do we have, Rang?
Left hand side in the blue, we have the Dunkirch division being piloted by Mimile with a Maverick income. Right hand side in red, we have Yamin playing CLI, also with a Maverick income.
So the kind of funny thing for me here is actually we have the A3, the AR-196, which has cannons in the wings, MG in the nose, and a turret, and yet somehow this Spitfire has decided, you know what, I still want to kind of vaguely tangle with that, which is very, very confusing.
Oh, he doesn't have any machine guns, that's probably right.
No, but it's like, yeah, but I'm like, what the heck are you doing over there, my friend? At this point, just time to duck on out. But already, like you said, we have the Italian Liberation Army in Dunkirk. So Dunkirk, this is the maiden voyage of them. Why the heck are they a C division?
They are pretty damn good because you got all the crazy janky infantry, but there's some pretty good choices in there. You got the 20mm heavy machine guns, which are pretty damn insane. And they actually have a decent amount of armor, anti-tank, anti-air. They're not a fast division, obviously, but they got enough to, especially in a 1v1 setting, to keep them going. They have just enough armor to make them actually a decent threat.
It certainly does seem like that. Now, the kind of funny thing for me here, too, is we actually see a very early Crusader, which is not what I expected to see whatsoever. Because that thing...
Put pressure on the Ardo.
Yeah, but, it's still a very big investment, and you might as well just kind of put more troops on the ground, in my mind, but that's just me. Especially when the Italian infantry is as solid as it is. Stellar? I'm sure you can make a case for it, but let's just stick with solid for right now.
We've seen actually an off-map being brought in here from Mimile, the 164, which is quite a odd caliber, but I think for the people on the receiving end, they're not really going to notice that much of a difference. And of course, this is Haroshaje, so off-map artillery in the center is pretty much the way to go.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I do want to kind of laugh at the fact that we do see a ton of L335s as an opportunity over here for CIL. As a quick note, at least for me over here, before the artillery comes down, you guys see at least one of those down in the bottom. He's just got rinky-dink 2 machine guns, just a couple of Berettas doing their thing. Other than that, don't expect a whole lot, but at least he's faster than those French tanks.
And that's going to be flanking around and shutting down that little push here from, not so much slowing it down, but denying reinforcements. Or is your bombs on the off-map being dropped? I think the off-map is about to go off, and that one flanking stack hound up north was making the distance, but the Marder 3 blew him up.
I wasn't even noticing that. Honestly, my eyes were fixated on the whole Baltimore dropping down, and I thought, wow, that is going to be a very cheeky pickup. No, he managed to survive. Just kind of like a lot of that Italian infantry over here. Yeah, they get hammered by a lot of firepower, but that fire really didn't have a whole lot of power behind it looked like.
Yeah, it's mainly distraction, so hopefully Mimile will follow up through, and it seems what he will be doing just a little bit, only with his festoon grenadiers, which, well, they're gonna be pretty slow in the advance, so this is really just an off-map artillery strike, which was buying him time, and he really could have did a little bit more, yeah, he could have been a bit more aggressive.
Very, very true. More artillery is coming down, though, so that 164, after that brush with death, he's going to go to be putting as much firepower as he can down on that Italians. But we'll see what happens. The Crusader, I think, will be just fine. Infantry, maybe not quite as much. I don't know.
And then down south, the tables have turned quite quickly here, as Yamin has been able to clear out Mimile's infantry push and is already doing a counterattack on the opposing hill, even spreading out some of his armored vehicles, the L-35. Actually getting a surrender.
Yep.
Imagine having to surrender to a tanker. Must be awkward getting back to the front lines. Or the rear lines.
Well, I was just waiting for that the Ardo to go and just take out the L335, because that thing's got tissue paper for armor, but somehow that armor, air quotes, survived.
Just such a small target. Spitfire goes in, gets the kill. Flak 43 gonna do its thing. I'd be curious to see if Yamin can get a good foothold into the southern hill rather quickly. There's one infantry unit to slow him down, but He's already flanking around to the Alpini. And he has actually has a stack count in a pretty good ambush, mostly good ambush position. He just doesn't have the aiming speed to shoot anything along that narrow corridor.
Don't worry, the Alpini will force those guys to disembark. And frankly, it's just a little bit of, there is firepower. In fact, I kind of forgot that the Outcommandos over here have a crazy amount of firepower, all things considered. That's a scout squad with a double MG34.
Yeah, and grenades and multiple submachine guns. They are quite a scary force to be trifle driven.
Unfortunately, they still are a scout squad, and, subject to the same vagaries of life, i.e., there's not going to be many of them coming onto the field. Not during this phase, anyway.
Nope. We're seeing the Stormtrooper being brought on in. I mean, Yamin's trying to rush up some reinforcements here, but it could get pretty dicey for him. This is a very, arduous situation, you could say. Because if he doesn't secure his hill, it's going to be very hard to get back onto it later.
Well, at this point, too, while one of the squads of Alpinis is getting pinned down, the Stormtrooper, they're going to run right smack dab into Gustatori powder troops and the L335s. Okay, well, that goes down, but yeah, there you go. That was a very, very quick counterattack.
Yeah, that should pretty much secure it. If you're looking to the center here, it's been quite a bloodbath. Both sides, but more so Mimile has actually been setting up a more beefier force. Yamin's a little bit more spread out, of course, with all the off-map artillery, but really not a whole lot of actual maneuver. I mean, most of the major maneuvers is happening down south here.
For the time being, anyway. I think both sides are kind of just throwing troops in the center to make sure the other guy knows, hey, I'm still here, while trying to kind of slip a blade other places. Unfortunately for Mimile, Yamin's just been way more better placed for doing that.
Yeah. And then completely nothing up north. That will be probably the quiet sector for this match. So the Spitfires just flying about, seeing if anything sneaky is going to happen. Oh, I see what he's doing.
Yeah, eyes on, and that Baltimore's going to go and drop, 700 kilos or so of Heidi Adu. And that Festoon, I think, will be very much, having a party, just not in the... Oh, wow, he survived.
Huh. He's actually doing that to push up. He really does not have a big force. He's going to need a little bit more, yeah. And I do like his push, especially using the recon plane to scout ahead. But if he wants to try to put pressure up here, he's going to need some more reinforcements. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's got, some infantry being brought on up.
But while he's doing that, he's also making a bit of a vague push in the center with that town. I say a vague push, it's that vagary basically the Sherman. And said Sherman, thinking about this for a second as well. That off-map, I think, is actually Winchester now too.
Yeah. It hasn't really done that much. He hasn't been able to use it in an offensive manner, which I always think is a shame if you're not being able to use your off-map artillery strikes to gain new territory. And now we're seeing here Yamin survived long enough to bring in some reinforcements. And, I guess it comes down to whether the Sherman can blap everything.
Yeah, or that Crusader can actually put some fire on some infantry targets without putting himself in the line of fire for that Erdkampflatte. The 20 mil cannon you were talking about before.
Yes.
This is the first time we see this as well, I think, too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's only available to the Dunkirk division, and it is it's basically just an automatic anti-tank rifle with also anti-infantry capabilities. It is extremely good for the price.
Well, it's one of those things. I'm pretty sure it would have been in other divisions, but Goering over here, he said that don't worry, we're just going to put a giant 40 mil cannon on our aircraft, and we'll never have to deploy that thing. We'll take care of all those British and French guys by ourselves.
I mean, if a single Mosquito flew over Berlin, you'd have to call him Maya.
That's true. A single Mosquito indeed. But you know what? It's not really not a lot of still water around, so most Mosquitoes with just a nice can of rage, easy to handle that way. Not a big deal. Yes, I know what you were talking about. No, I didn't take it that way. Yes, I'm tired. No, I don't want to talk about it. Northern side. Yes, please.
Oh, northern side. That's much more interesting than the central side here, because this push is actually going quite well here for Yamin. I mean, once again, CLI have some pretty nasty CQC troops. I guess it comes down to once again can he keep up the momentum to get into the actual Gucci town?
And I don't know that he's going to be able to do that. Nope. The festoons over here, these guys are going to go down. But the odd camps over here, I think, are going to be just enough, I think, to kind of hold the line before he loses both flags. He might lose one of them for now. At least until, the odd commandos and the festoon going to do is come right back in.
Yeah. Little scratch defense here. I wonder, really for Mimile, he's got another off-map artillery, 194mm, still very odd calibers. But he really, especially of how both the north and southern flanks are going for him, which isn't well, he needs to make a breakthrough in the center. He needs to use that off-map artillery offensively, and he does have a pretty decent force here to actually get some territorial gains, because he's going to have to make up for loss of flags up north and down south.
I do find myself mildly amused by the fact that he's got infantry sprinting on forward with Panzerschrecks, and they'll be able to pick up a cheeky kill or two, I'd imagine. Guys, oh my god. This is going to be painful. And the Crusader, in fact, that was the right target to kill.
Yep. And he's going to back off to get the reload. And you really just forget, like, Dunkirk does have some really good infantry squads as well. I mean, pretty much that's the northern version of Toulon. I mean, yeah, the Act Camp, like semi-autos, 2 MG42s, the Panzerschreck.
And the festoons, you know how I feel about, those kinds of troops in the first place, but hey, they're not too shabby. No. They'll do what you need.
They even got some fashionable Labelle rifles, which they're pretty much just like a French infantry squad.
Yeah, it's kind of weird actually having it chambers as an 8mm. That was one of the weird things, one of the rare rifles I think that actually was chambered at 8mm really overall. Not important right now. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's like frantically typing a comment saying, no, you're wrong, Khan, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But the next artillery barrage is coming to the center. And down south, actually, one thing I thought was kind of interesting, I kind of want to see how this works out. We have a 57 mil that is slowly working his way into the theater. Unfortunately for him, I don't think he's really deploying it anywhere useful. I would like to see him move it west, and he's not going to do that.
Yeah. Oh, Younker's being brought in. He's really following through the, artillery support into the center. The Younker's actually completely flying over. I'm guessing he lost line of sight. But will he follow up? Because he just knocked out a vast majority of Yamin's forces. As we can see, of course we have God Vision, so we have much better information. There's not a whole lot left in his town for Yamin. And this Mimile, he needs to realize this, especially just how hard Yamin is going up north and down south. You got to realize that your opponent is not doing too good in the center.
Also kind of laugh at the fact that the Junkers is like, aha, not a commander, we must kill him. So there's an L3 down there, L3 command, and I don't think, that JQ88 is taking a nice long way around. More than enough time to have the Crusader come right back in. Second Crusader, but a Crusader nonetheless. Mm-hmm. Baltimore's on the northern side, going to try to go and break the deadlock there, aiming for the Oddkampf. Okay, all right. Interesting decision there. If nothing else, he should be able to break open that little, let's call it Festung Europa over there.
Yeah, he's going to need a little bit more. Oh yeah, he does have a decent amount of reinforcements being brought in. But Mimile's done a pretty good job of, stabilizing the northern flank in his favor. I mean, he doesn't have the hill completely under control, which sucks. But that little town position, you set up some infantry in there, you got a pretty good, natural defensive line. Just a little bit of territory for your machine guns to cover you. And just as long as he holds the flags, it really doesn't matter too much if Yamin is on that hill.
No, it doesn't. But down south is kind of interesting here, too, because Yamin does hold one of those kind of, let's say, arterials that can reinforce a central position. And while he's not really being as successful, never mind, I have to take that back. P4 has gone down, I think, courtesy actually of that 57 mil. So finally we got it. Just my course, I was looking the other direction. That southern town is very much in Yamin's control. Well done.
Yeah, and that's going to be another flag over to his favor. And at that point, you just set up where that flag is. You got a whole lot of open ground between you and the bad guys. You slap in some anti-tank guns and call it a day. Especially 17-pounders.
Yeah, I kind of forgot the fact that the Maros over here, the Maro Bren groups, have 4 Brens, which even considering how, mechanically finicky those things are, 4 Bren guns is a ridiculous amount of firepower, all things considered.
Yeah, they saw the Bren group in SD44. It's like, hey, we can do that, but better.
Exactly. Now, especially since the Maros over here do have those wonderful Panzerfausts. So Lee Enfield's, Bren's, and Ardo goes down, courtesy of the Crusader, certainly giving another life up to the Lord for that one.
Yeah.
But yeah. Actually, things are looking a lot better over here for the CIL. Actually, look up north, we actually see ourselves in Obici, where the 75 mil is engaging those positions. And while the infantry is not able to be aggressive just yet, he's slowly chipping away at stuff.
Yeah, Yamin's been extremely effective up north and down south, making these plays and putting a lot of pressure and really playing, trying to not make his map as much as a meat grinder for him, just against Dunkirk, which is very good. Well, both divisions are pretty decent in meat grinders, but being able to play his momentum and move around, while Mimile, I mean, he is starting to make, movement in the center here, but it's still pretty slow considering just the amount of investment which has been thrown here, and it's not really getting him any gains of those all-important flags.
Well, it's got to be very, very fortunate here as well that CIL does not get the same amount of off-map artillery that he's bringing to the front himself. And I know right now, with the Commandosi, I mean, I feel like the Italians are prepping to really stabilize that central position.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to be able to get back into the central position along the crossroads, but at least it'll be enough to secure, preferably both of those flags in the town. If he gets that southern flag, 16-8, good God. That's all he needs to do, just keep up, the +2 pressure.
And I think he's going to be able to do that. I feel like the Ardas, as they kind of come in to get some nice scouting, it's still not enough. I feel like some of the artillery strikes that occurred here just were not... They weren't consolidated, if that's the right term.
Yeah, and he does... The reason he's even managed to get this far is just due to the constant off-map strikes. I believe he has one more unit he can still call in, so he's not doing too terrible in that regard, but he really should be making much more progress. I mean, once again, it's a fog of war and line of sight, but he's been flying recon planes here constantly. He should really realize now is the perfect time. Well, not perfect as much anymore, but this is the best spot for me to apply pressure.
You would like to think that. I
like to think a lot of things.
But the Commandosi over here, these guys are going to be thinking, man, it was bright, sunshiny day a second ago. Where'd all this kind of shade come from? As 194 just starts slamming into them. And of course, all these 3 guys, falling back. Very good idea, sir. Very good idea.
We've seen, actually a pretty decent reinforcement wave up north here for Yamin. He's still, he's got a little bit of a foothold, actually holding one of the flags up north. So I think his second wave of troops should be enough to clear on through, because it is a lot of disheartened troops holding here for Mimile.
Well, we're starting to see little drips and drabs of defensive works being brought in all around. So the final off-map is being brought to the central position, still not being quite as aggressive, maybe is the right term here, that we'd like to be seeing. But we are also going to see that while we see more and more of Mimile's troops being pushed to the center, more and more of the Italians get pushed to the flanks.
Yeah, he's actually putting a hell of a lot of pressure. I mean, down south, he's actually in a very good defensive position. Regime Mimile is trying to do his darndest to at least get that one little flag position, and he should be able to do that, especially using the Stug fire support. But still, it's just very good use of, especially up north, it's very good use of pressuring all across the map.
Mm-hmm. That is certainly the truth. And the northern side over here, the infantry's pretty much all dead. Wow, that's bad. That's very bad.
Because it's all just a lot of those disheartened troops, and without adequate fire support backing them up, and also just the artillery here, because Yamin may not have the off-map artillery, but by God, he does have some on the map, and they've actually been doing a pretty good job suppressing these units.
Yes, they have. Now, the Arda over here, he is out of machine gun ammo in terms of his wings. Of course, he still does have that nose, not necessarily cannon, but not even that. He's got one MG in the nose. So, okay. The Martyr 3, if he's lucky, he's going to take out the Sherman before he dies. If he's unlucky, he's not going to. And if we're lucky, both of them will shoot and kill each other at the same time.
Which would be quite funny here. But I think the Sherman is going to get that first shotgun, because it does have stabilizers, which gives it pretty good accuracy while on the move.
Funny thing is, he didn't kill it. He hit it, but he didn't kill it. The Commandosiev actually used a Piat.
Oh. The Piat did something?
I know. I was as stunned as you were. Not as stunned as that infantry is going to be when those 2,000 kilogram bombs hit the ground.
I think a bit more than stunned. I think, like, dead or and silent.
I think I was referring to the stun troops in the center part of the map that were like, oh my gosh, dear lord, what happened on the other side of the map? And while there was a shockingly awful destruction in the northern side, down south there's just a different kind of push happening here. You see Kriegsmarine infantry being brought on in, once again continuing the kind of interesting firepower. See Bergmans and K98s and that Lichte MG, the 0815. A lot of this stuff in an attempt to take back these tiny flags, but it's still 16-8. So I feel like every single time Mimile gets some kind of territory, he gets pounded for taking that tiny bit, another part of the map.
Yeah, and once again, like, we keep kind of hammering on about how he's not being aggressive in the center, but he is cratered, like, quite literally,
Yes.
Yamin's side of the map. There's so much no man land between him and Yamin's defenses, and Yamin's has been able to hold here with a relatively cheap force, just because, I don't know, he's like, I don't want to say he's even bluffing Mimile. I think Mimile's kind of gaslighting himself to think it's more here than it really is. Trace is blowing up his town to smithereens.
Well, the fun thing is he's blown everything that should be a town already. There's nothing left east of that 50-yard line.
Yeah, it's just emptiness.
Well, and I guess that's the last thing, too. Like, for me, I start to see tons and tons of infantry on my flanks. Is that the assumption, do you think? Oh my gosh, infantry everywhere. There's got to be infantry in the center as well. I mean...
Yes, it's that constant pressure.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at this and trying to think to myself, what's the psychology behind it? Because now we're seeing drips and drabs being deployed as, of course, we earn to that C phase. And I'm not sure if this is times 2 territory just yet, but it does feel like we're starting to get towards that point right now, as Mimile is kind of very confused and kind of punch drunk, and kind of like he keeps tossing out fists here and there.
No, honestly, I do think it's times 2's territory. Just both north and south is completely collapsed, and we're seeing Yamin here actually going for the farmstead. Gonna get into the rear line here. So, alright, let's do times 2 at 23-20.
Sounds good. And times 2. Well, folks, as we kind of go to times 2 over here, we are going to see that Czech artillery position L at a Kriegsmarine Pioneer. Ooh, getting real frisky now. But we're going to see piece after piece after piece starting to get really reduced. And I'm wondering. Yep. Okay. Yep. They should be able to hit the longhouse over here in the south as well. South central position. I mean, the Festive Grenadier is out in the open. It's a one cannon, that 47mm cannon that could kind of rotate around and engage. And the last artillery strike is coming in on top of the kind of greatest concentration of Italian material left on this map. Well, in the center.
Yeah. It's really been suck if you're an Italian bro in the center. You've just been constantly, bombarded by all sorts of heavy caliber guns.
And that's true. I mean, it's true. And down south, we actually got to see kind of the same thing. As finally, at long last, the Kriegsmarine Infantry and the Jagd Pioneers are being somewhat aggressive. And it's not because they have a crazy amount of armor support, because they just don't. But it was vaguely enough until the Crusader came on up and said, God wills it, and willed away all of those German infantry.
Yeah. And it's also just a matter of, once again, just having cheap tanks available just helps out so much. I mean, the L-35 is an absolute joke of a tank in real life. But it's actually pretty good. But as you're seeing here, just, the bare minimum of armor, bare minimum machine guns, when your opponent has no armor or anti-tank. it just works extremely well. And we see this time and time again in SD2, like cheap armored cars, cheap tanks, especially in 1v1s, absolutely matter because you just want cheap fire support to back up your fleshy meat bags, which have to move across open fields.
Well, and that's the other thing too, isn't it? Is that the L-35, it's basically just a 10-point, half track. Actually, maybe a slightly upgunned half track. But other than that, there's no real point other than just to kind of, have teeth and pretend to look scary.
Yeah, if it kills half an infantry squad, it's technically paid itself off because it's 10 points. And it has 2 machine guns.
Unless, of course, the infantry squad is a slash trooping.
Yes. Up north, actually, we're seeing Yamin. I think he was trying to get to the enemy spawn as a Sherman. I mean, it's just completely collapsed there. Increased Marine infantry is the only thing holding, the semblance of defense, and one Gustatori is actually in the rear trying to do some partisan action.
Well, it was kind of funny. We kept seeing Gustatori get behind the lines, and you see that they still smoke fire to the west of the Czech artillery piece. That was the last Gustatori who tried to do partisan actions. But even in the center, we're seeing Alpini infantry charge on in and take horrific losses. But even taking horrific losses, they're able to be aggressive, take their pound of flesh before they die. And we're 50 seconds out of Mimile kind of taking the hit from Yamin.
Yeah, and honestly, just very good play from Yamin. Like, I do like seeing when people play this map when they push the flanks, because usually this map just turns into a meat grinder. But just the initial pushes, getting up the hill, and, it's the real challenge is just that initial uphill battle. And in both instances, Yamin played it perfectly.
Yes, it was. I mean, he definitely played it perfectly. Most people, it's uphill both ways. For him, he says, you know what? You see mountains, I see molehills. And he walked all over those with his troops. So really well done.
Yeah.
About 1,000 difference. Kill-wise, Fabrizio doing rather well for himself. And Menegatti doing things for himself as well. If you can't tell him, actually, I'm giving the old hand gesture here, so we have to recognize our Italian brethren out there.
And then the loss is really... Oh, I guess the Dornier DO-217 knocked out like tune of Kamadoshi, but no real standouts in that match at all, Khan.
No. I mean, we had a couple of infantry squads do relatively well for themselves. And other than that, outside a couple of PBIs, but it was, pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
But well done over here. Better luck next time there, Dunkirk. Next time, maybe don't sit on your laurels. Don't believe in the air power and just kind of push for yourselves. Actually, ironically, that might have been a better idea, as in history. But CIL is, surprisingly enough, still somebody who's got a lot of teeth. So, well done, both sides. Anything else there, sir?
No, nothing from me.
Well, folks, in that case then, until next time, I'm Conor Work.
I'm Rangaroo. Take it easy.